conversation thread. We're talking through. I'm gonna have to set up some polls during the conversation. So we were talking about how we set that up.
Yeah. Welcome everybody. Hey David, first one in.
GM crew.
Fish, I haven't seen you in a while. Madison, thank you for walking through, helping me set this up.
Thank you.
All right. If anybody wants to follow along in the presentation, it's in there. But it's a pretty. We're gonna push the conversation more than we're gonna push the beauty of a nice presentation.
This is very interactive, right?
Yeah, this is gonna be very interactive. We're gonna have a lot of discussion around it. Hey Simona, hey Sarah, welcome.
Excited. Okay, I have the presentation. And please bear with me, I'll probably mess up in creating these polls in some way, but we'll get it figured out. We'll figure it out.
So you guys all should be able to see my screen if you go to, let me give you that instruction, just look at the common room and click on my name and you should be able to see the stream. Welcome David, Jahi, Joel, Lonnie.
Yeah, hi Jahi. I think Jahi, is this your second time in the library?
Yes, it is my second time. Hello.
Hi, Jahi's from DreamDAO, so I know her very well.
Oh, we love DreamDAO.
Nice. I heard there's some open dinner invitations for NFT New York for DreamDAO if one cruises the right Twitter accounts. So
yeah, that would be Gary's Twitter account. We're doing every day of NFT NYC. We're basically doing some sort of meal because we're bringing people from DreamDAO, but we didn't get tickets for NFT NYC, and we can't go to any side events because under 21. So we're creating our own gatherings. So if you're interested, go to Gary's Twitter. He's organizing those.
fabulous.
Yeah. Who all is coming to NFT NYC?
I'm gonna be there. Hopefully I'll see some of y'all there.
Oh, awesome.
I'll be there.
Cool. I know there's quite a few people coming. I know Colton is coming as well from Gitcoin.
Oh, nice. Bring the art with.
Yeah, for real.
Or abolish paid bars and we have even more fun. But that's a very British attitude, you know? Better or for worse.
So, all right, we're about 5 minutes in, plenty of time for people to jump in. This that you've been seeing here kind of changed the quote from him. There's no quotes on this because he never talked about how you would design your company or DAO. So yeah, we're gonna try to think of this throughout and maybe take some lessons into where we can make the experience of the DAO more just, better. I saw Andy's been talking about like the one sentence that he's been thinking of. It's like, how can we use Web3 to make the world more just? And I thought that was a really interesting connection to this conversation. So that's kind of the overall theme that we're gonna go with.
Do you want me to hype you up first and kind of like frame it up before we get
Sure,
started?
sure.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah. The library. I'm sure you all have seen him before, Disruption Joe. And he's been working full-time in crypto since 2017 when he started the Chicago Blockchain Project and Voice of Blockchain Conference. And he joined Gitcoin in the fall of 2020 and was the first of the core team to leave to work directly for GitcoinDAO as the workstream lead for fraud detection and defense workstream, which is responsible for defending Gitcoin from threats to its legitimacy, credible neutrality, and sustainability. And so today, as you all might already know, we're talking about governing DAOs from behind Rawl's veil of ignorance. This is funny to me because I did debate in high school, like Lincoln Douglas debate. I don't know if any of you know what that is. And we would like use this sometimes to like frame up cases. And so today it's going to be first a discussion followed by an activity. He has a lot of interactive parts. And as always, we'll be tagging you in the Discord thread so you can have discussions there. And then last little announcement before we get started. There will be no official discussion call for the Public Goods Reading Club this week. Henry will annotate on Thursday as usual, so if anyone happens to have time that day, you all can annotate together, just like on a one-off session. So you can message him for information and coordinating that, and you can see the Discord message for the reading. But I think that's everything, and you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. If you can't see the slides in that, you'll be able to follow along and get the purpose of this. So the purpose isn't that everybody participates perfectly. We're going to use some polls within the channel. Madison's going to be so kind enough to help with that. And we're going to use a little bit of QV voting on the Radical Exchange application. Radical Exchange is where I first actually took this from like a thing you read in college and do like a quick discussion on and theorize around and put it to a practical use where I was able to embody the feeling. And I'll tell you a little bit about like the experience as we go along here. But really I want to encourage like all of you to jump in anywhere you like, and we're going to make it a conversation. We're going to start with a quick piece about like who is John Rawls. We're going to look at the veil of ignorance, do a little video together here, and then we're going to talk about the types of voting that we're going to be using so you understand them, and then just go into the activity and the voting discussion. We're going to talk about the voting that we're using here because there's specific tools that you're going to use in the poll and on the Radical Exchange site, but then there's also all these other types of voting that are out there. And one thing that's been interesting to me is learning in the DAO, like what types of decision making work best at what size groups. So to start, let's get into John Rawls. In the 20th century, he's probably the most famous economist to me. Definitely well up there in this crowd. It might be Eleanor Ostrom, who actually wasn't an economist. But I think the part that struck me most always with him was how much he talks about turning inward on most issues. And I've found for myself personally through life that the more I get upset at the world around me, the less capable I am at mitigating, the things that come at me and the changes in environment and the tough times that come through and the hard decisions that you have to make throughout life. And I always connected really well with in all of his major topics. But I think the veil of ignorance is probably the most broadly spread one. But the way he adjusted political liberalism to me and reframed it, really that's like a movement that starts more like with the French Revolution. And it's the idea of decentralization. There's a great talk from Glenn Weil where he says, hey, decentralization is not new. It's called the political idea of liberalism. And then if you read through Vitalik Buterin's The Meaning of Decentralization, you start to see, wait, there's architectural decentralization, there's logical decentralization, and there's political decentralization. And Liberalism was this idea that one of us isn't that smart alone. We actually need each other and need to bat the ideas off each other. And maybe it's because we're not all in all the places, having all the information, all the frameworks. And maybe it's because our intelligence socially is much, much larger, much stronger, much more correct. And a lot of times people associate that with a very like left-wing polity idea. And it's interesting sometimes how he connects it to the economics of it. And even in discussions of like markets where he doesn't focus most of his discussion around there. But you see that the way then he frames it comes back to this individual who's not fully capable of pricing something because he doesn't know what everybody else is thinking, how much they need that item, where it is. And it comes back to the idea that we aren't as smart by ourselves. So he actually connects that idea through to from market things to decision making. And then around that, there's this idea that if we don't have all the information of the other people, and we were looking to create a system for all of us, how would we create that system not knowing which one of these people we were going to be, what role in that place? And that's the veil of ignorance. So we got this video right here. I'll just have each of you watch it on your own if you like. And I'll drop the YouTube link into the channel there as well, so you can watch it if you can't see here.
Veil of ignorance. Veil of ignorance. All people are biased by their situations, so how can people agree on a social contract to govern how the world should work? Philosopher John Rawl suggests that we should imagine we sit behind a veil of ignorance that keeps us from knowing who we are and identifying with our personal circumstances. By being ignorant of our circumstances, we can more objectively consider how societies should operate. Two primary principles support Rawl's veil of ignorance: the liberty principle and the difference principle. According to the liberty principle, the social contract should try to ensure that everyone enjoys the maximum liberty possible, without intruding upon the freedom of others. According to the difference principle, the social contract should guarantee that everyone has an equal opportunity to prosper. In other words, if there are any social or economic differences in the social contract, they should help those who are the worst off. And any advantages in the contract should be available to everyone. So, according to Rawls, approaching tough issues through a veil of ignorance and applying these principles can help us decide more fairly how the rules
Can
of
someone
society
who's
should be structured.
unmuted, where there's
And
background
fairness,
noise, mute?
as Rawls and many others believe, is the essence of justice.
Go.
All right. So we're going to leave that there and have a little discussion time here. I saw a lot of people said that they have looked into Rawls, studied Rawls before, or participated in some discussion. So I want to go ahead and give a little time if anybody had any experience or has in the past looked at this and has a thought on the topic. Go ahead, share with us.
It's not a particularly sophisticated thought, but I moved back from California last year to London, I've lived in like Germany, India, Israel, and I'd worked in the US for a long time, but I didn't have an SSM for the first 3 months, and I'd not understood the psychic toll of not having healthcare living in California. Like, it was something I thought about every single day, and it made me realize my mind had been living in this marshmallow place where I knew if something awful happened, like I had a really bad childbirth, and I didn't have to pay $50,000 or $100,000 for it. So I feel quite strongly about healthcare being a human right, and for it being better than it is in the UK right now, certainly. I feel super strongly about it. I don't have very sophisticated thoughts beyond that, but I think context matters, like where you've lived before, what your experiences have been. Have you seen people go bankrupt through medical bills, etc.?
Anybody else want to share any personal experience or connection to Rawls?
But just the concept gets somewhat echoed in some pop psychology right now. I've read either on Twitter or Facebook quotes like, we need to get out of our own way, or I'm my own worst enemy. And those kinds of ideas seem to connect right into Rawls' veil of ignorance, really to the fact that we aren't aware of our own biases. And that can cause some real friction. That's all. Also, not the most sophisticated thought, but it's early here.
Yeah, I just kind of want to add that I read a lot of stories about people who refuse to go to like call an ambulance because of how expensive just the ER is, even though things seems like super dire. Like I was in university and I was volunteering for like the international orientation that they were doing for the school, and they pretty much had this presentation. They're like, pretty much try not to get sick. Like the best way is just to not be sick in America. Like you don't want to be in the ER. So that is just like the most horrifying thing, is like you just don't want to be sick. Like the best financial advice in the US is probably to not be sick. So that's just something to think about, like for me. Like I think it's just like, and it's just very interesting. Even the insurance seems like, is it really helping? And they have their ways around it. But yeah, so I think universal healthcare has always been like a huge thing. And if it's not universal healthcare, I just think it should be cheaper for accessibility. And that's all.
So we're going to drop these 5 voting pieces in here so they're going to be in the channel. And this is where the activity is going to start. And I'm going to keep pushing the conversation and making some space for us to get the other voting activities rolling. But please do jump in the channel and answer each of them right now. We're in our voting jam 1, where you're going to answer each of them as you, right? Like for each of these. Yes, I agree with this. No, I don't agree with this. And then we're going to move into a quadratic voting next, which is being set up. It has to be set up with a specific number of people. And right now I have 10, 15, 23. Okay, so I'm going to put it that there's 20 people, because a few people probably won't jump in. And that makes it work better if it actually does fill up. So if you don't get in, don't feel bad. What we're trying to do is make sure that like we get the answers that show us how the results of these votes actually end up different by the end. So it's going to be one of those things where we all participate a little, we all talk, and then at the end we're going to review it and be, oh wow, this actually changed like the outcomes of the ways these things work. So if anybody has other, while she's dropping the questions in there and I'm setting up the next QV, I'd like the conversation to kind of stay away from these specific topics. And we should be thinking about the concepts here. Is it good or bad? I saw Sarah had put in there was a piece that it kind of feels like the piece in the video was in this related to this bubble argument that's kind of been discredited. And how has it been discredited? Anuj, I see your point in there. Ben, I'd love to hear your thoughts about like this. Like, is he all that smart? Is this a good idea? Are there things that have been pointed out as wrong or updated?
Hey Joe, I think that's a great prompt, and I mean I think the beauty of what he's saying is that he really doesn't have to be that smart. You know, I think the idea of harnessing the wisdom of the crowds is fundamentally important. I think where it gets complicated is kind of what questions you ask or what structure you create to try to harness that collective wisdom. And you know, the space between sort of negative and positive rights, like you know where you know the having the right to something versus the right to not have something imposed on you is where you know stuff gets tricky. Like you kind of highlight it with the sort of where taxation fits in here. Like if you have a right to healthcare, then you know then we impose taxation on other people to make it possible. So yeah, it's kind of that minutia that gets complicated. But I think it couldn't be any more important in the polarized world that we're living in right now.
I also think that a lot of the time, the issue with having people figure out, I mean, like there's a couple people in the chat who were talking about binary answers here, is like group intelligence is not necessarily always going to be the most accurate form of outcome, right? We have this like issue with group consensus that is generated through like inclusion sometimes rather than generated through like actual reasoning. And the ways we can see that is like, for example, like when people mob certain ideas in like on Twitter or whatever the case may be, it's like they may not actually like, it may not actually be the right thinking that a group is having as a group. And so like what you kind of have to mediate is like at what point, like how much of it is like good information, like offering good information, and how much of it is offering good information, and then how much of it is creating really positive norms for evaluating information as a group, so that the group intelligence is not based off of just like inclusion, and instead is based off of people's desire to like be accurate by creating good norms there.
All right. So I'm making a little space for us to move this topic from a lot of the results that you're seeing there for an A/B test. This first one, we just did an A/B. And that model, you're probably not too surprised at most of the results in there. The least controversial one is that crypto shouldn't be illegal. But as you look through, there's different varying levels. And you see that there is, when you count up the vote, there's a little bit of intensity behind it. And a lot of times when we make decisions and point towards things, what we're actually doing is we're doing two things. One, we're giving a binary yes, no. But a lot of times we lose fidelity or resolution in that, or conviction, because we can't put any weight behind the system or behind your conviction in a certain topic or so. I'm going to ask you now for, I'd love to hear about other voting methods. I think many of us have heard about ranked choice voting and quadratic voting a bit. But I'd like to hear from somebody a voting method other than the A/B type that piqued your interest, let's say. Where did you learn about it? What situation is it good for?
So I interact a lot with Polkadot as an ecosystem, and they have a conviction voting system that allows you to post your tokens for particular periods of time in which those tokens are not liquid, based on the conviction of your voting period. So if there's going to be a change on the chain and you think it's particularly on the chain or in the community, you think it's particularly important, you can post like a number of Polkadot tokens for a period of time to multiply the value of that vote. So I interacted with that the first time with Polkadot. I've seen this in a couple other places, right? Like I think it's popping up on the Secret Network. It's also popping up in Orca, to be able to sort of indicate direction in terms of people voting. The problem is it doesn't really, in a token-based model, it at least for just like that particular aspect of it, it can result in majority voting happening by people who have big holdings, and then just multiplying the value of their holdings by like let's say you have 100 tokens and then you lock it up at 3x conviction, then you have 300 tokens for the vote, and so you can pass something. So there's a lot of danger there. So that's one form I've interacted with, and that's kind of one of the detractors. But I do like that it can indicate people's sort of intention and conviction on things, and other people can see that. Ben, I like what you're pointing out here in the chat too.
Ben, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, basically just like multi-attribute decision making is basically a model of like using a variety of different criteria that's predetermined by a group to make a decision. So instead of just like a yes, no, up, down vote, you've got a series of different criteria that you're all judging something based on, and you can apply different weights to those criteria in different ways. Like to me, that's just kind of a more nuanced way to make a decision than sort of what could be often more polarizing up-down decisions or sort of popularity-based decisions, where instead people are kind of like really looking at the details of why a decision's being made.
So I'm about to drop links in here, and what I want you to do is grab it, and if you grab it, go ahead and put an emoji under it, because the system actually doesn't have where I could just spread them out to all of you. So I got to put them in there a quick one by one here. And then we'll get a result here. So if you see an emoji under one of them specifically, just ignore that one. Try to get the next one. Whoever's the first to put the emoji, take that one. And these are your quadratic voting links. And what it does in quadratic voting is lets you signal some intensity. But for you to signal extra intensity, it removes your ability to have as much intensity with the others. Imagine like a more simple way to think of this would be like, you might be able to put 5 votes, 1 on each of 5 topics, or you could put 5 on one topic. But if you quadratically weight it, it would be something more like if you could only put 5 on all the topics, or you could only vote on one topic with 3. So if you really had conviction, you could put 3 votes towards something, but you would lose 2 votes. That's the idea. That's not the exact mathematics here. I just find that explanation is one that is easier for people to learn here. And now that I've got that up, I'm going to go ahead and bring back this screen so that you guys can see these live results as it rolls here. We start to see how the quadratic system is giving us similar outcomes, but we're starting to see some differentiation in the conviction that people have. Now, if anybody has a thought on something that's similar between all of us, I love coming into Gitcoin rooms where you ask what country people are from, and you're like, holy crap, there are people from everywhere. Like currently I'm in Costa Rica. If you haven't heard your country said, go ahead and say it out. Say it out loud. I'm in Costa Rica right now. Actually, tomorrow I'm moving to Portugal, so we'll count 2 there. Zero.
Congrats on moving.
What country are you in, Zero? BFA? SAF, QZ?
Where I am at, or where do I?
Yeah. Either or.
Romania.
Canada here.
Nice.
Hey there, folks, out and about in Canada too, eh?
Nice accent.
Yeah, that was good. Has everybody gotten one? Do we need some more voting links here? Let's see. Oh, looks like we do need some more. All right. All right, a few more voting links in there. Now, we're pulling up these results now and starting to see the differentiation. And this is as us, and we just saw a little bit of the diversity in the group here from where they're at around the world. But there's also some things that are probably pretty similar about us. Does anybody have anything that is like, hey, this group of people, we're probably all, if somebody wanted to bucket us into one group. The first one that comes to my mind is like passionate, probably. I feel like the people in Gitcoin are very passionate people, very mission driven.
It looks like we think that healthcare should be a right more than we think crypto should be legal.
Right. And then if you go back and look in the chat when we did the AB vote, it was 16 to none for crypto legal, and universal healthcare was 12 to none. Interesting. Did people get there a little late, or? And the one that was the most swayed back and forth, should only be rifle be right, had 4 and 9. That is the middle one right here. So we're starting to see some levels of differentiation. Now we're gonna move into the next piece of this, where we're gonna do this whole thing again. If anybody has observations that you would like to put into the vote jam, just throw them into the channel, and we'll add them afterwards to be able to share out some of the observations and thoughts. So if you have thoughts about the one we just did, that was vote jam 1, go ahead and write in there in the channel, vote jam 1, and then tell us your observation. Anything about what was happening or so forth. Now we're going to take the same topics and we're going to start thinking about applying Rawls Veil. Okay. Now, when I did this with a group in one of our first Radical Exchange meetups in Chicago, we actually looked up the distribution of characteristics within the US population, and we used buckets or little bowls with the characteristics written on them, actually distributed the way they are through the US. But what I want you to do is think of this, and if you got a pen, pencil, a little notepad next to you, whatever you like to do. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to use your computer to do this, so if you got a feather and a quill and some ink, an abacus, you can use this to come up with a person that's just not you. Like, I'm not 18. I'm moderately smart, I hope. So let's think like I'm musically gifted and can't do math. And let's say that I'm picking up a person that is not me. Let's say that I'm non-binary. Let's say I'm loaded. And maybe I have a chronic health condition. And pick out some characteristics for yourself and try to pick something that is not you, even in the ones that you're not thinking of. Like, what's a person that you don't necessarily connect with? If you have a master's degree, maybe you don't connect all that well with somebody who, dropped out of high school. And now, what I want you to do is take a few minutes to put that person together. And while we're doing that, feel free to jump in with conversation here. And Madison's gonna go ahead and drop those same 5 questions again. And think of it from this person that you've selected. Now from this person, like, can you embody that person? Look at the things you selected there. Okay. Man, it's hard. I picked a bunch of random attributes, and all of a sudden I'm starting to feel a little weird because I'm noticing judgments pop up in me. Like, wait, a smart kid that can't do math, why is non-binary and he's from a rural place, a very strict Catholic, but he's loaded? And I'm like, why did that pop up in me? And I think when we did the experiment in Radical Exchange, that was something that the observation didn't come out till the end, but we realized everybody had that. As you started to pick a bunch of characteristics, you started to think, well, these ones don't fit together. And you start to think, like, why? Why? Does anybody else have any other observations from picking up and choosing a person? This doesn't mean you have to feel this way. We're trying to embody the feeling here and embody the understanding of what it's like to be that person, to know what your triggers are that drive you.
Something that I'm wondering is I'm trying to not stereotype the person I created. You know what I mean? Of like, it's hard to know, like, if you know the set characteristics of someone, you might be able to assume, but I'm trying to, like, beyond what I might associate certain characteristics with certain beliefs, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's so easy to take those characteristics and apply a bunch of stereotypes. And it might help to create a story around your person. Like really tell us who this person is. Okay. I'll go first with a quick story here. And then we'll take a few minutes, let everybody make a story. When somebody's ready to share, I'd love to hear at least 2 or 3. So my person here, I'm thinking he's got chronic health, and for some reason diabetes is jumping in my head, and his family's pretty loaded, so like they're able to take care of him, and he really knows he's not that good at school. Maybe he's not trying, but he's definitely musically gifted. He wants to be a musician. Maybe he's working on being like a rapper, and he grew up, let's say he's in like Southern Illinois, so like everybody is like really strict, like Protestants, like around him in his neighborhood, and he's bought into uh, that religion. He believes in it in the same way he believes that the music he loves is cool, and the people around him, and his family is kind of loaded, but if he's not going to try math, they're not there for him to stop him from dropping out of school. Maybe they got really wealthy with like a more blue collar type thing, and that's why they couldn't help him with math so much. But he's fun to hang out with. He's a cool cat, and like he's got a YouTube channel, and you know he's actually growing it pretty fast. Maybe he's on Audius. You know, you're starting to put a story around this person instead of just a thing. Anybody else? Can anybody else share? Does anybody else?
Wait, I just want to share one thing. This reminds me of a game I played with a few of my friends about a year ago, where we would pick a stock image and we would like create a story about the person in the stock image. It was really fun.
I would definitely love to hear from anybody who hasn't had a chance yet. So you should see in the channel. There you go. Did I hear somebody coming in to share?
How about Patrick or Saf or Zerb? Any of y'all want to kind of share like some of your conceptions and ideas of who this person might be and like how they would vote?
Yeah.
Where they're kind of landing?
For Jahi, I would love to hear from Jahi. I know
Yeah.
Jahi probably something great.
As this person that you just kind of made up here, are you noticing that you're voting differently about anything?
Yeah, that's a good question because I saw there's definitely a difference in the voting. Like the abortion one is very different than what people voted for themselves.
I think the taxation question could probably be linked to education to some degree, and maybe that folks with higher education believe taxation is more justified, and maybe folks that haven't gotten a full explanation of why taxes are beneficial or can be beneficial and used to help society at the lower education levels, it may feel more like theft. And so I did choose an uneducated high school dropout as well for that education criteria, and it changed my vote on the taxation question. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't sure what to put for mine because I chose someone who's a 70-year-old man, but lost one of his legs, and so and he is like as well. I chose a high school dropout, someone who's more poor, and so I was thinking because of like his experience, maybe he would be advocating for universal health care, but I'm not sure if he would be if that would make him someone who is like in favor of taxation or not. So that's kind of what I was trying to figure out.
I like that, Madison. I kind of went to extremes with mine too, and it was fun.
I was hesitant to share because my like character was pretty lukewarm in all of their characteristics. It was like a 48-year-old. Um I chose for race Hispanic male who had a history in athletes and math and has no health conditions, and graduated college. And like I was like trying not to like impose like um my preconceived notions of what this individual would vote for because possibly he could turn out to be a wild card. And I think that if I had gone with more extreme or like particular characteristics, it would be easier to predict. And I think that's really interesting because yeah, I couldn't really like figure out what they would choose.
We're setting up the next quadratic vote here. I'd love to hear some other people. Who did you pick? Did you give them a story? Did you feel the tension thinking through what does this person think? Maybe you felt lost, like I don't know what a person in this position thinks.
Something that I found very interesting is that, and I saw it with you because at the beginning I was like thinking about one person. I was trying putting my head into one person, so I chose characteristics not randomly, but actually kind of like from one person that I know that I don't see they like have shared perspectives. But then when I saw your example and I saw like all the random things that you put, and then I also had a feeling like, okay, these things might not go together very well because of like general preconceptions and biases. But once that you put a story into it, I saw that how we went from outside of the general and into our kind of like real potential person there. You know, we made an explanation of why this person might be white, but it might be located here, but it's like this. So that was very interesting, and I'm still like a bit behind. So I did the same thing again, but like with random characteristics, and I haven't bothered. But yeah, I'm creating a story behind it, so it makes way more sense, even like the random aspect. And I found that super interesting. How when you create a story behind it, like you go to from the general to the specific, and like the person takes more light.
So something that I really liked during this exercise is like, I think it's really cool to know that there are people that really don't care at all about the topics that I care a lot. So it's like, yeah, like how can always try to burst our little bubbles and know that we are like too many people and everyone have several kind of interests and priorities, and that's really really powerful to just know that we are really really small, really insignificant, and that's freeing in my mind.
Oh, sorry that I laughed out loud there. I wasn't muted. I was laughing at Jahi's picture. It was awesome.
No worries, no worries.
But thank you very much for sharing. And Lynn, I want to call that out. That's a really good observation about teaching emotional intelligence, like doing things like this. I highly agree. Yeah, now I'm realizing I missed out on the prompt. Like we should have done a drawing. Draw your character first before, and then make up the story. All right, I'm putting this next quadratic vote in there. Yep.
Do you want to share the instructions just briefly again in case anyone joined late of how to use these links?
Yeah, so if anybody joined late, if you see an emoji below one of these links, it's already taken. If you see there's no emoji, put an emoji on it and then click the link, and that's your voting link. Okay, so there can only be one person to use each link. So put an emoji on it right away, and then we'll get the results starting to come up here. Now, this is, remember, you're still this person that you have created. This person that's totally different from you. And you're putting conviction on it. Now, maybe if your health issue was a chronic health issue and your family is not wealthy, universal healthcare might take up all of your vote weight. You're willing to lose the ability to have a voice on the other things to really show conviction on that one. So think through how you're going to weight it. You know, take your time a little bit. You know, we have 5 or so minutes to really get this vote through, and then we'll have our ending topic, and then I'll be sticking around for a little bit before the DAO vibes, or as the DAO vibes start. 15 minutes or so after to discuss.
Something I'm just curious about is why were we given so much more like voice credits for this round of it?
Oh, was it? Probably because I selected it weird.
Okay, yeah.
Oops. Yeah.
The more voting power, the better, I guess.
Yeah, and the way the quadratic formula works is like, okay, if you want to put one vote on it, it uses 1 credit. If you want to put 2 votes on it, it uses 4 of your voting credits. If you want to put 3 votes, it uses 9 of your voting credits. Right? So if you want to put 10 votes on one topic, that's going to use all 100 of your voting credits. But then you won't have any credits left. But you could put 5 on one topic and 5 on another, which each uses 25, and you still have 50 credits left to distribute amongst the others, where you could put 1 or 2 votes apiece, maybe 3 for 1. Wow. Owning a rifle should be a right is really up there. We are embodying people that are the opposite of us, considering the AB vote from the beginning. I love it. I love it, guys. And you see how these things in this conviction could possibly happen. And somebody just came in who had a chronic health problem for sure. All right, it seems like we got enough voting links up there. That's not the one. Right, so start throwing some comments in there that we can put onto the Vote Jam too. And if anybody has an observation that they're seeing, I'm going to finish up my vote here. But you guys get the conversation going. Feel free to leave comments that say Vote Jam 2.
Observation I made is I felt not as, how do you say? Not as like personally engaged with the topic. I distributed my votes way more equally this time, while last time I felt much stronger about some topics than other, which is kind of an interesting observation from myself. Maybe just not the right character that I invented, but yeah, but much more equal distribution this time for me.
Could you say a little more about that? Like when you embody this person, do you feel like this person probably would be a more monotone expression of self than yourself, or is it more that you felt that you didn't have the right to impose strong will on another person, or?
Not necessarily, but just that probably my person that I've created, the topics did not resonate as much as with how much they resonated with me personally. And so the decisions I took were more of like kind of in the moment than really thinking about it deeply and like where are my priorities.
Yeah, my approach was to try to be someone who kind of doesn't think I should exist. I'm like, I was kind of like, how do I pick someone who's like so far the opposite of me in so many different ways that like how are they going to vote? And I mean, like one of the crazy things for me was like just realizing I was like, I like as a person have a pretty strong conviction that the right to bear arms is not a temporaneously good decision to have made. Like it's different now than it was back then. But I was just like, I should be able to make this decision for myself. If I want to defend my property with my rifle, I should be allowed to. I should be able to have a weapon that will efficiently kill someone who is intruding on my property, and I shouldn't have to pay taxes because I own this land. It's mine. And yeah, you know, like, and that sort of stuff. And it was like, also, like, I believe in full self. I'm even giving myself an accent, which is really funny. Um, um, like, I believe in full self-determination, so I should be able to, on the private market, be able to decide who it is that, who it is that I want to get my healthcare from, and the market's going to be efficient in that regard. Which is like, I don't know, that's like always one of the funny things I noticed in crypto is like people who are like staunch libertarian people who will put themselves in a position to think that markets can solve things without realizing that markets are tools and you have to use tools correctly. And so I'm just like thinking about this and I'm like, oh, this person does not have the complete picture. This person that I'm embodying that is voting this way doesn't have the complete picture of all the interdependencies, and it doesn't really sound like they've had to work with other people. It doesn't really sound like they have had experiences that have exposed them to other people's lives. It doesn't really seem like, it seems like they've tried to exist entirely independent of everyone else. And in my mind, that's like, oh wow, like maybe exposure is a big part of the problem here. Is like literally just being exposed to people who are not like you. If you are taught that people who are different from you are something you should reject, then you're going to reflect that message back to yourself. And I find that's like, that feels a little bit revelatory, because I just like feel really sorry for that person, for the person I'm embodying, because I'm just like, you just have not seen enough of the world.
I think yeah, also along those lines, Pan, I think this is just because I guess I have really strong conviction on my own votes. Like, I think the things that I voted for, so like, you know, universal healthcare and not making guns legal, I think all of those things make the world better for everyone, even if you're, you know, like ultra rich and kind of like opposite of me. Like, ideally, or I guess like what I'm convinced of is that if we had all these things, there wouldn't be people on opposite sides of the spectrum, because it would just be less polarized. And yeah, so like I found myself still voting for very similar things, just because, you know, if I was super rich, I would still want I would want there to be less social inequality, and I would vote for, you know, people having public health care. I would vote for people need guns because people feel threatened, and I wouldn't want to live in a world of like, you know, fear. And yeah, like I think the society that we live in right now is not super comfortable even for like the rich and privileged. So yeah, I don't know if that's like a hole in the veil of ignorance kind of thing. But yeah, I feel like you kind of bring your own convictions and processes or yeah, into that process as well. Yeah.
That's a great observation. And Ben's in the channel is really good. I just dropped in where we're at now, just a quick screenshot of the 2 quadratic votes. And you know, we're at the time now. I'm going to stick around another 15 minutes for questions in that and just conversation. But what I want to leave you with, anybody who has to run, is now imagine going through these votes one more time with the veil of ignorance, that you don't know what characteristics you're going to have. Every one of those characteristics, you're just going to pick out of it's a lottery. You have a chance of being any human on this earth. How do you do it? If we were to set up rules for how, and working agreements, you know, within the DAO, how do we do it?
So since we're at time, like you said, before people hop off, I just want to make you all aware, Lynn dropped a tweet in the chat, but GR14 starts a week from now, next Wednesday. So go like the tweet, if you're able to support the round starting next week. Public goods are good. Yeah, that's the little PSA.
And Memapalooza 9 on Friday.